powerful icons in black music. When they were at the top of the game, they didn't fight at that point. They were too afraid of losing whatever they had. So by the time they wanted to make a difference, by the time Bill Cosby wanted to buy NBC, he didn't have the Cosby Show at that time to be able to stand up when they wanted to literally throw him in jail, you know, when they actually did throw him in jail. So people have to understand just the bravery. There's so many people everywhere.
Yeah, back at it again, everybody. Welcome to another episode. BLACKFIRE-RISIng. Your man Fire here, and I got my man Kanan. What's up, bro?
What's up, man? We back at it.
Facts, facts. So man, we had to get this one out because this is something's going on in real time as it's happening. Kanye West and man, it was interesting because just the other couple weeks back we put up an episode about I forget what the exact title was, but we talked about certain men and masculine energy that spoke out against the industry or spoke out about things that were wrong and how they seemed to wind up coincidentally, with an untimely demise. And we talked about the different types of characters, assassination and real assassination that can be carried out against individuals that regardless of what our personal opinions about them may be, individuals that spoke out against the system or tried to make power plays. We talked about Cosby. We talked about Michael Jackson. I mean, we even talked about Kevin Samuels. But man, Kanye is like watching this in real time, man. This dude is saying some real stuff. So I'm gonna let you, do your intro, man, what you think about this, man, and we'll dive into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I listened to one of the most recent interviews. I believe it was the right one. It was about 3 hours long, though. I only listened to about 30 minutes of it. But from what I'm getting, from what I'm reading and what he's saying, it to me it sounds like another one of those situations where a lot of what he's saying is being taken out of context to create a narrative of negativity. Like I said, I didn't finish the entirety of the video, but it's definitely something that I think we need to address, especially on a channel like this. So I'm gonna let you kick it off, but I'll chime in every now and then because I didn't watch the whole video, just so y'all know.
Okay, cool, man. No problem. Again, I'm not the most versed in this as either, but I think like philosophically speaking, there's a lot to be said about it. I know some of the more salient talking points about it was that he spoke out against the Jewish control in Hollywood and in the music industry in particular. He mentioned a couple of individuals by name and sort of at the risk of, to not get copy struck and this sort of thing, because we're still filling this YouTube thing out and they've been sort of coming at this channel already, man, very early. So just to put it, I guess, more politically correct, he spoke out against the Jewish control in Hollywood and in media. He named certain individuals by name and talked about how the campaigns against him in particular are sort of geared to make him look crazy or sort of discredit him because he happens to be one of the types that just speaks his mind and he's not afraid to speak his mind, that he's basically ready to live on his feet and not his knees. He'd rather die on his feet than live on his knees. So that being said, man, there's just a few talking points I put out, and then man, you can just let me know. I'll pause and you can let me know what you think about him. But he talks about the injustice. I think he'll be the man to watch. It's like when we look at the list of men, like the black men in particular, that went against the grain and dared to speak out, it hasn't gone well for them. And I know in the last video, we talked about Bill Cosby's attempted acquiring of CBS. And at that time, coincidentally, his son was assaulted and murdered, right, while he was allegedly changing a tire or something like that, except they didn't take any of his valuables. They just murdered him. that put Bill Cosby on ice for years. You know, I want to say damn near 20 years. And before this last scandal broke with Bill Cosby, he was at his second attempt, or the most recent attempt, to take, you know, ownership of a major news network, or the CBS. And coincidentally, again, in a 20-year span, there are 2 points in time where this man is hit with major life-altering, discouraging events. And we know how this whole thing broke out, with literally over 50 women popping out of the woodwork, claiming things that he did, most of them falsified. And finally, you know, he got convicted and sent to prison over what amounted to giving someone a few prescription pills, you know. And that's just one of the examples, you know. And we look at these other brothers that it happened to. The significance of that is that hardly anyone escapes after being defiant against the system. Looked at Sam Cooke, Prince, Michael Jackson, you name it. Now, watching what's going to happen, or what's going to become of this Kanye West situation, it's going to be like watching the proof in real time. To me, it'll be like seeing that bully on the playground. He's beat down a lot of people who dared to speak up. And now there's someone standing up, and, you know, the whole schoolyard is watching. So there won't be any denial. I mean, and we can get into the types of potential backlash or assassination that I think may happen to him. What you got on that, man?
Well, it's definitely going to be worth watching, in a sense of not just for entertainment value, right? So like you said, this is a real time thing about some real deep issues, deep rooted issues. Excuse me. So I think it's worth watching just from a historical standpoint. So Kanye West is a well-known celebrity. He talks a lot about not just being a rapper, but at this point being the richest black man in American history, right? So I noticed when watching the video, he would make comments of such nature, saying that they want to just call him a rapper. They want to just say he's crazy, he's bipolar, and they don't want to emphasize on, you know, what he really came through and who he is now as a man, not just Kanye West, the crazy rapper. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens, because I think it will be a changing point, um, really a changing point in history, even though people might not want to acknowledge it as such, because whether good or bad, if something good or bad happens to Kanye, I think it's not going to go well for the people that he's trying to expose, in my opinion, because of his position. I think he's probably one of the better people to take that stance. And it's almost like, you know, everybody ain't fit for the job, but it might really be his calling. So on my end, I think it's very interesting from that standpoint.
Right, exactly. And you know, it's good. It's a glorious thing to watch from the outside, but being, you know, being a black man in America and a world citizen, as it were, we know what that pressure feels like. We know what the heat feel like. And sometimes when you bring the smoke, the heat is inside of you as well. And a star may look glorious and bright and all that good stuff from the outside. So the observers get to, you know, they get to see sunrises and sunsets and the warmth of the star. And it's a good thing. It's a good feeling. But the star itself, man, I don't know if people appreciate the amount of pressure, the amount of heat that it takes on the inside when you're going through sort of those struggles that actually cause you to burn bright. But at the same time, man, it's not all stars are destined, you know, to burn long, you know. Some of them cave in under the pressure, some of them explode under the, you know, the heat. So, man, it's glorious, but at the same time, I feel for my man, you know. And you know, either way, so him being the man to watch, him speaking against the grain, and this, you know, everybody's eyes will be on him. We'll see what happens. And something you said made me think, because if the industry is like, okay, let's say, for example, there's industry and powerful interests that want him to shut up. And they say, well, we got flex on him. We got to make an example. Well, like you said, the downside of that is that they would have to expose their hand, which would lend credibility to everything that Kanye said, which would make him a type of a martyr, which is the most effective form of soldier, because that rebel, that soldier who becomes a martyr, a successful martyr, actually lives beyond his own physicality. So it would be immortalizing him in a way. So that's on one hand. But on the other hand, can they afford to ignore him? Because that would be, if we ignore him, yeah, we can potentially take away credibility and just act as if some of these accusations and insinuations are just ludicrous. But then again, he's not going to shut up. So it's like, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I'd like to say, I always talk about how truth, like gravity, is going to bring the whole plane down. It'll either be a smooth landing or it'll be like the Hindenburg, right? But, I think Kanye is one of those glitches, as it were, in the Matrix, one of those anomalies that is like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm built perfect for this, right? Since my mom passed, I've been a tortured individual. I've had to struggle through my childhood. I've been tortured. I've been tormented inside and out. And I become the brightest star. I can take the pressure. So the more pressure you put on me, the more I'm gonna shine. And yeah, it's painful and it's heavy, but at the same time, that's my life. That's what I'm used to. And I think it's the perfect storm of character, that would cause him to be one of those examples, as like gravity or truth, like gravity, one of those first signs that, things are going down. Like, can the industry continue to defy the gravity of truth? Can they continue to distort and defy reality, in the face of truth? And he might like just be one of those first engines that are going out, as they say, when they say, Houston, we have a problem. you know
Yeah, most definitely, man. That's exactly how it's looking like it's gonna play out. So some of the talking points, if you want to get into, like I said, I watched some of the video. One thing that stands out to me is what I'm noticing. This pattern is that when you speak out against a certain community that people mention, and they say that this group of people is controlling the media, they're controlling the Black narrative, and the second they say that, they get quoted as anti this group of people. And then all of their material has been, people who had the interview have to take the interviews down, right? So the more that I see that pattern, it's already exposing the truth, because you almost can't mention a certain group of people without it becoming, hate speech, even if you just mention the title. And one thing Kanye said, that I noticed, was that he referred to himself as a Semite,
right.
a black one, right? And to me, I think that it's kind of a shot to our people to act as if we can't identify with such things without almost being called, prejudice, just to say that. So I think when you dissect what he's really saying, it's exposing truth by how the powers that be are really reacting to it. Because if it was just nothing, you wouldn't have to react so drastically to such small comments, in my opinion. That's just one of the things. But as we talk about some of the talking points and things from this particular interview, I think that it's really, like I said, it's already exposing truth just from the comments that he made, and it's already like a domino effect that I personally see happening. In my opinion, it's a slow reaction, but it's almost like the truth is really out there, And some people are really going to grasp that truth of what he's saying and not be distracted by, the media saying, oh, now Kanye West is being sued because he made such comments about George Floyd's family, which to me those are more the those are more the things to focus on to get you to not focus on the major issues of what he was talking about.
Right, man. And a couple things you said, like, yeah, Kanye said, it's crazy how Black people in America and around the world really can be the most oppressed class by any measurable means in reality, economically, um, social economically, in the media, underrepresentation, last hired, first fired, any measure you want to really look at in reality, we're at the bottom. But at the same time, there are groups who can be at the top by those same measures and still be counted more protected than the group that's at the bottom. And that is an expression of reality. That's a real expression, like you can measure that. And yet certain classes of people will try and coin the identity Semitic for themselves and say, henceforth, therefore, you can't be anti-Semitic, as if it's some sort of hate crime, which a crime against any defined group of people, it is a crime. But unless a member of an underprivileged group that is speaking out against a member of a privileged group, the privileged group then tends to get, all of the preference, all the protection, even though they have all of the firepower. And it's like everybody knows the history of, Shem, Japheth, and Ham. And Ham was the father of the Africans, which, Eurocentric historians identify that Ham was not the father of the Negroes. The Negroes were the descendants of Shem. And Japheth was the descendants of the people who would later become known as, Caucasoid peoples. So it is ironic that Black people get confused of being anti-Semitic when historically, biologically speaking, genetically speaking, Black people are Shem descendants. If you're talking about, reality. But yeah, the other thing you said was, yeah, and it's like the fact that looking objectively at it, I respect George Floyd and everything that happened, and George Floyd, I believe, was how can I say this? He was an example of what happens, to us in general. The idea of getting lynched, of getting murdered before the eyes of the world by the authorities. It is the extreme showcasing of the bully that will take your life in front of everyone, and that you're powerless and your people can only stand around and shout and cry. It's a throwback not just to slavery, but it's the legacy of being Black in America. It's a lynching. It's a modern lynching. And that's irregardless of the character of George Floyd, is what George Floyd stood for. Now, if someone speaks on the personal character or of George Floyd, for example, you may or may not disagree, but one thing I say about Black people is we tend to process so emotionally that sometimes we get stuck on emotions and we're no longer able to hear messages. If the devil himself or comes out and tells the truth, I mean, if you're in a house and a snake comes through the door and tells you that it's on fire, as long as that matches with what you see in reality, that could be information that needs to be acted on. You could question the motives of the snake. You could maybe be careful as you exit because there, it might be some other trap. But if the house is indeed on fire, and you get information, the information itself ought to be evaluated logically, but one thing Black folks do, we will get caught up in emotion. And that is to say, the fact that he said something about George Floyd and that he wore a White Lives Matter shirt and that he went to lunch with Donald Trump, all these things seem to automatically disqualify anything he says, which everything that he says ought to be taken, evaluated independently. You know, we could question his character based on his behavior, but if he says something that analytically seems or proves true, you know, you got to take that truth for what it is. You know, that's my take on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of mentioned something else that he was talking about, just his just being in the fashion industry, right? So he kind of explains when he came out with the idea of the White Lives Matter shirt, right? This was it's a play on Black Lives Matter, I guess you can say that, because we all know of that movement is what we'll call that, even though they make a lot of money off that merchandise and it has nothing to do with the actual um delivering black people from oppression, right? So they'll make money off of this as a fashion scheme, but they'll put it as a they'll call it a movement, like it's a revolutionary movement, but it really doesn't trickle down to the victims. So to me, that's exploitation. However, Kanye was explaining how he had this T-shirt, but this was more of a fashion venture, and how it was pulled because it doesn't fit the narrative that people want um, to to talk about. So if you actually put that shirt on display, they know what having a shirt like that actually means, because they don't want to put that group of people in a light of a victim mentality, right? So it's not just about what the shirt says, it's also what's basically how the world will view that if you see black people wearing that shirt, or if you see anybody wearing that shirt. It's like, well, what are you saying? Why do you have to remind people of such a thing, right? And it's like, well, he's saying like, well, why do you have to remind people that Black Lives Matter, right? So he's taking it to another level of basically making people think about what they do and not necessarily being so critical, and exposing the truth behind these things that it's not, it's more than just a fad. It's obviously something wrong with a statement like that to a people. If you have to basically remind people like, hey, Black Lives Matter, and you wear that shirt and you feel empowered. But if you put out a White Lives Matter, then it's like, well, people don't need to be reminded of that. And you have to ask yourself, well, why? Because they already think of them as human. So to me, the more you watch this interview and you really listen to what the guy is saying, he sounds far from crazy, in my opinion. Um, so like I said, it's really worth watching, and I can go through a lot of talking points, and we will. But just to kind of piggyback off what you said, since you brought it up, I think that that was significant to touch on.
Yeah, facts, man. That's true. That's true. So yeah, well, I wanted to sort of do some predictive thing here and just real quick, not to take much time, but I wanted to say while watching him, I want to cover all potential bases, like, of what may happen or how this may play out. And as we watch this in real time, I think he'll either be made to, apologize in conjunction with saying something, or, you know, be made to repeal his statements, which it may be kind of far for him to do that. It may be kind of too late, because that playbook they've ran on a lot of people. Like Kevin Hart did it. He was made to apologize. We know that Tiffany Haddish said that Black people are Shemitic people, and that, but then she was made to repeal that, apologize. We know Nick Cannon, and on and on. So even if he's made to sort of apologize and stand back, would kind of be like a mockery at this point. I don't know. It runs the risk of being the same old, and people are used to that. It's like all these Negroes are speaking out, and then they're all just made to apologize. Ice Cube, on and on, man. But here, so assassination, if they assassinate him, what is it? Character assassination, meaning scandal or bout of extreme craziness, which will belittle him in the eyes of the public. Physical assassination, meaning he has some untimely accident of heart, some form of death, overdose, spiritual assassination or isolation, meaning leave him to oblivion or blacklisted, take away his platforms, etc. But I don't know if this isn't possible really in the case of Kanye, because, unless they simultaneously block him from, multiple or all media sites. And I guess a number 4 would be let nothing happen to him and simply wage an anti-message campaign, which would also be an option, but I'm not sure how effective that would be because, and it seems like I'm hedging my bets here, but either it's A, assassination in one of its forms, or B, do nothing about him and just put out anti-messages. Oh, he's crazy. We got Rabbi such and such. He says Kanye's crazy. But I think to take that route, they'd have to come with actual historical evidence and facts. And I think, again, truth is against them. So any sort of attempt to explain historical documentary and go back in time and sort of talk about these things, it will reveal a lot of cracks in the wall of white supremacy because, scientists already say that the original people were in Africa, for example, and even in the biblical accounts, that would mean the original people were Black there. If you want to do a parallel correlation of any religious book, the original people would be Black. And as the narrative progresses forward, that then would have been the norm. So whoever God would have chosen to be special at that time would have been amongst the normal people. I don't think they want to go that route, man. But yeah, man, what do you think as far as like how you see this possibly playing out or whatever you want to say about it?
So yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that knowing the people that will be after him, they're gonna study Kanye and basically some of Kanye's weaknesses I think are easy for them for he can kind of play right into their hands, right? So I think it's true that Kanye can be emotionally involved in things and be pretty much unpredictable. However, it'll be easy to get footage of Kanye at the right moment doing something questionable enough where they could use that to criminalize him. And we know once you get criminalized, you get thrown in jail, particularly maybe for a crime that people don't know a lot about, whether it be harassment and you just see a video of him, smashing a car window or anything. Even if that's not the circumstance, it could be criminalized. He could be thrown in jail, and people, the general public, will just eat that up. Like, we knew he was crazy. He's in jail. That's where he belonged. Wow, you kind of shut him up. Because once you put him in jail, you seize his most powerful asset, which is money, because he is worth a lot of money. So it's hard to just try to silence him because he can buy, money talks in the world. So he can always buy a platform to speak on because he has not the biggest money, but he has enough money to move around, like unlike other celebrities in the past or people. Or a tax crime. People don't know a lot about taxes. You can always, it don't have to be true. So that's what I'm trying to put across. Anything of that nature, I think, can be used against Kanye because of his emotional rants. Like we seen what he did with the Taylor Swift. So people already, they will buy that narrative. It's fairly easy. So if Kanye is smart about it, I think not only will he minimize his screen time, and actually not just work on that, but work on getting a team of people around him that could help him deliver that message, and really secure his protection. If he does that, I believe Kanye will ultimately be victorious because the message that he leaves and the imprint that he leaves, I think will be carried on long enough where it would expose enough truth that, like I said, it will become almost trendy to an extent, of people speaking out against the wrong that's happening. And I think as a people, we always adapt. So now that it's kind of out there and we kind of know, I believe there's already celebrities and people that are working together to basically to strengthen the Black people, the Black entertainment world. And that will trickle down to the people in the streets because that's kind of how we operate. That we were always in tune and in sync with things, which is why people are intimidated by that, right? Because of how we move. They like to call it an ignorance, but it's really a gift. So I think if Kanye is smart, this can go a real positive way for him, and it can open the doors to new possibilities. It won't necessarily just change everything, but just getting our people to think collectively and look out for each other is a huge advantage, for us to get out of this hole. So yeah, that's kind of my take on it. As I see it going either the very typical route of put a lie out there, because we have enough footage to pose that question, or Kanye actually is smart enough to know what he's up against, and he figures he puts his chess pieces in the right place, and we actually get something positive out of this truth that he's speaking.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to recite this a little something I thought about, and I just jotted down some notes here. But I just wanted to say, starting out, Kanye mentioned at one point that he sold his soul to get in the industry. I think he said he sold his soul. It was a crappy deal, but at least it came with a few trinkets like a Happy Meal. And I think that the tragedy, as we know, all good tragedy has to end in a hopeful note. And the tragedy of the saga that has been Kanye West through his journey and character arc in Hollywood is, it's been amazing. It's been like a shooting star. But I would say that, in your soul, at one point, it comes down to choice. If you sell your soul under false pretenses, can you get it back? That's the question. It's like if you go to a dealership and you want to buy something and the salesman is a crafty bastard, right? And they put some things in the fine print and you don't know what you're getting into. Well, legally, there are laws that could protect you by saying, yeah, you signed and you sold, you signed on the line, but it was under false pretenses, right? Can you get out of that deal? I think legally you can, but it costs a lot. It costs you your time that you've invested. It costs you a lot of the money because you may not get it all back. So what does getting it back look like? It will definitely cost. If the riches and the fame and the favor in the eyes of the world is the payment for a selling of the soul, then getting that soul back means you would have to risk it all that you were given, or forfeit much of it rather. Or whether or not Kanye is right or wrong, ultimately, I find it inspirational in the sense that he's standing up to the powers of the industry. They not only have the money, but control of the imagery and the media. And so in that way, they have control of the imagery that's projected into people's minds via their eyes and their opinions via their ears. So they literally can persuade public opinion and write it. And anybody that survives an opponent like that is like David and Goliath, man. You got to count on some spiritual back. And we are a spiritual people, where it comes from, truth and time will tell, So I'm gonna land the plane right there, man.
Powerful icons in Black music, when they were at the top of the game, they didn't fight at that point. They were too afraid of losing whatever they had. So by the time they wanted to make a difference, by the time Bill Cosby wanted to buy NBC, he didn't have the Cosby Show at that time to be able to stand up when they wanted to literally throw him in jail, where they actually did throw him in jail. So people have to understand just the bravery. There's so many people everywhere. I know everyone can relate to being afraid to say what you're gonna feel because you feel like you're gonna lose something. So whether you agree with me or not, I believe people are going to feel the fact that someone is brave enough to say something.